"Nice stretch, Grandma. Trying to relive your glory days?" They laughed as she bent by the runway, shirt lifted just enough to reveal ink curling up her ribs. But then everything stopped. A general walking past dropped his clipboard. Froze! Within seconds, phones were seized. A lockdown was called. Because the tattoo wasn't a joke. It was a blacklisted rescue code from a mission so classified it had no name. She wasn't just a trainer, she was history they tried to erase, and her reappearance would tear open a secret the military buried 15 years ago. Where are you watching from? Tell us below, and subscribe to Veteran Biker for stories that should have never stayed hidden. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the airstrip was already humming. In the pale blue haze of morning, Jenna Rhodes stood alone on the far edge of the tarmac, her silhouette long and solid against the unfolding light. At 44, she moved with a precision born not of habit but of discipline. Every stretch, every breath measured, controlled, silent. She wore a fitted grey training shirt, rolled just slightly at the hem as she lifted her arms and twisted at the waist. Beneath the shift of fabric, dark ink peeked out, a spiral of angular symbols running diagonally along her left rib cage. It was quick, barely visible, but not quick enough. "Look at that," one of the trainees muttered, just loud enough for the others to hear. They were across the lot, 5 of them, early 20s, fresh-faced and sharp-eyed in that particular way only young soldiers could be. 2 were stretching half-heartedly, and another fiddled with his smartwatch. The last 2 had their eyes fixed on Jenna. Damn, she really went full midlife crisis with that ink. What's next? A motorcycle and bad Tinder dates? Laughter. Jenna didn't flinch. She didn't even glance. She pressed deeper into her stretch, fingers brushing the concrete as her breath slowed. "Bet she did it to feel tough," another one said. "Like, look at me. I'm still dangerous." The lead trainee, a cocky corporal named Brash, lifted his phone. He didn't try to hide it. "Yo, stretch again, lady. I want to send this to the group chat. Operation Cougar Crawl." More snickering, but at that exact moment, a different set of boots hit the concrete. Heavier, older, more deliberate. Major General Avery Mason had been walking from the command center toward the central tower, flipping through a clipboard. When he paused, his gaze landed on Jenna, then on the symbols along her side. He froze. The clipboard fell. "Shut that off," he snapped. The trainees looked up, startled. Mason was already striding toward them. "Phone, now!" "You too, and you," Brash fumbled. "Sir, it was just—" "Lock it down," Mason barked. "This entire section. I want every recording device seized. Right now." The air shifted. Laughter turned to tension. Base security, stationed nearby, reacted to the command like a wire had been tripped. Within seconds, the group of trainees was surrounded. Jenna stood, slowly straightening. Her eyes met Mason's across the runway. He looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. Inside the secure wing of the simulation command building, a screen blinked to life. On it, 3 still frames, a stretch, a flash of skin, a swirl of symbols. "Zoom," the analyst said. "Enhancing now," replied the tech specialist. The symbols became clearer, line by line, not random, not decorative. They were encrypted, and they matched a pattern buried deep inside a vault labeled Red Echo 9. "That's impossible," whispered the commanding officer overseeing the scan. "This was never digitized." "Exactly," the tech replied. "These codes were never meant to be entered into any system. They were stored manually, on paper, passed hand to hand. Or," the analyst murmured, eyes narrowing, "etched onto someone who was never supposed to come back." Major General Mason had not spoken since Jenna entered the holding room. It wasn't a cell, but it felt like one. She sat calmly at the table, hands resting on her thighs, expression unreadable. 2 guards flanked the door. Mason stood across from her, arms crossed. "Why now?" he finally asked. Jenna didn't blink. "I stretch here every morning. Don't play games with me. You know what they saw. They saw skin. They saw ink. They assumed something shallow and pathetic. That part hasn't changed." Mason leaned forward. "You have red echo on your body. Do you understand the weight of that? That operation doesn't exist on any record," she finished for him. "No official trace. Just burned files, whispers, and 3 survivors." He stared. "You weren't supposed to survive," he said. "I know." A beat of silence. "And now you're here," Mason said, "at this base as a simulation instructor. Quiet, invisible, worked for 15 years, until this morning, until someone couldn't help but laugh at what they don't understand." Mason sighed, the weight of secrets making his shoulders sag. "We need to contain this." Jenna smiled, just barely. "You think it's contagious?" He ignored the jab. "Does anyone else know what those codes mean?" "Not unless they were there." He nodded once and motioned for the guards to step outside. "Why did you do it?" he asked more softly. "Tattoo it, of all things." Jenna leaned back. "Because it was the only thing that kept me real. When the nightmares blurred and the VA visits failed and I couldn't remember my own name, I still had that code. I remembered who I was, what I did, what mattered. Mason didn't speak." "I wasn't trying to make a statement," Jenna added. "I was trying not to vanish." Outside the secured wing, word was spreading. The video had been stopped, but not before one version slipped through an unsecured device. The clip was short, grainy, but clear enough. An older woman, stretching near the tarmac, dark ink visible along her ribs. Then the audio, Operation Cougar Crawl. "Boys!" It was already on 2 group chats before security traced it, and it was already too late. The clip hit a niche military meme page, then a veterans forum. Then someone ran a frame-by-frame analysis and paused on the tattoo. Someone else matched it, and someone else remembered red echo. The story began to stir. Meanwhile, Jenna was walking across the base in silence. She hadn't been formally charged, she hadn't broken any rules, but the air around her had changed, like a storm gathering just out of sight. Trainees now looked twice, some with curiosity, others with embarrassment, a few with something else, awe or maybe fear. She walked past the simulator bays, through the side corridor and into her small office, shut the door, sat. On her desk an old field map, faded, folded, kept more for the weight of memory than utility. She traced the corner, Red Echo 9. Once she'd held a unit together with only her voice and a paper code drawn in ash. Now those same marks threatened to unravel her entire life. The knock came an hour later. It wasn't security, it was Colonel Brandt. He stepped in, closed the door, and looked at her the same way Mason had. "You didn't just coordinate that mission, did you?" Jenna didn't respond. "You wrote the code." She still didn't answer. "I saw the report," the old one, before it was sealed. "You came up with the fallback protocol when the main channel was jammed. You got the signal to the evac team by memory. You walked 3 clicks under fire to get it there, not alone." "No, but the rest didn't make it." A pause. Brandt lowered his voice. "Why are you here, Jenna? Why now? Because simulations matter, and because the new protocols are using restructured versions of Red Echo models without knowing what they mean." Brandt sat. "You're saying they're misusing them. I'm saying they're stripping the meaning, turning life and death encoding into training puzzles. That can get someone killed. It already has." He went still. "You have proof?" Jenna slid a small drive across the desk. 3 flagged malfunctions in the last 4 months. 2 panic incidents. 1 hospitalization. All linked to corrupted simulations using fragments of Red Echo patterns. Brandt stared at it. Then quietly, "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" She looked him in the eye. "Because I didn't think anyone would believe a ghost." Later that night, Jenna sat alone in her quarters. She opened a locked box beneath her bunk. Inside, a single worn patch, the insignia of her old unit, faded, burned at the edges. Beneath it, a photo, 4 faces, hers among them. Only one other is still alive. She picked up a pen and began writing a message. To the one who remembers, we may need to finish what they buried. The air in the command briefing room was dense with silence. Colonel Brandt sat at the far end of the table, fingers tented, eyes locked on the projection screen behind Jenna. She stood, shoulders squared, as line after line of data scrolled upward, evidence of simulation corruption, cross-referenced with trainee incidents. No one interrupted her. When she finished, she stepped back. The room was quiet for a moment too long. Then Mason spoke. If what you're saying is true, these exercises are using live rescue logic with flawed coding. Jenna nodded. They've been repurposing legacy protocol structures without context. Those patterns weren't built for training. They were designed for field evasion under psychological duress. Another officer, Lieutenant Ellis, frowned, but the cadets never leave the room. Jenna looked at him. That doesn't matter when your brain believes it's dying. The silence turned heavier. Brandt leaned forward. How did they get the Red Echo code models in the first place? I thought they were quarantined. Jenna hesitated, then tapped the console. A new slide appeared. Log extracts from an archived AI training module. A single name was highlighted, Evermark Systems. Brandt cursed under his breath. Private contractor. They've been feeding back pseudo-random models into the simulations for months. Mason rubbed his face. Jesus, we gave them experimental access. They built drills out of memory-coded ops. Jenna's voice was steady, and someone approved it. This isn't accidental. It's systemic. The room fractured into low murmurs, men and women in uniform wrestling with implications none of them wanted to own. Jenna didn't move. She watched, listened, knew what was coming. Mason turned to her. You're not just here to report this, are you? No, I'm here to stop it. How? She reached into her folder and pulled out a second file. Inside, copies of emails, a memo requesting broader AI simulation deployment, and at the bottom a signature, Colonel Sabrina Hartley. Brandt's eyes narrowed. She's with the Joint Oversight Panel. She greenlit Evermark's expansion, Jenna said, and she knew the codes were active. She served in Red Echo Intel. Mason exhaled slowly. You're going to go public? Not yet. Not before we stop the next rollout. There's a new batch of cadets starting this cycle. If they push the update before we fix it, someone else breaks. Or worse. A soft chime broke the tension. Brandt tapped his earpiece. We've got a problem, he muttered. Videos resurfaced. Jenna's eyes snapped up. Different angle, higher quality. Someone clipped it from internal CCTV. It's spreading faster this time. Vets forums, Spec Ops channels, damage control, Mason asked. Too late, Brandt replied. And there's more. A frame-by-frame breakdown. Someone overlaid the symbols. They cracked it. A long, cold beat. Jenna didn't speak. She knew what that meant. Mason looked at her. You're compromised. She nodded. Then it's time I stop hiding. Back in her quarters, Jenna opened the old message draft. She finished it. Hit send. 10 minutes later, her comlink pinged. A single reply, you're not alone. The next morning, the base woke to an unusual scene. Jenna Rhodes, once invisible, now stood at the front of the main tactical briefing, flanked by Mason and Brandt. Her name is on the roster. Her voice is clear. She told them everything about Red Echo, about the abuse of the codes, about the trainees being pushed too far. The room of cadets didn't laugh this time. They listened, and in one back row, a hand rose. Why didn't you say something before? Jenna looked at him. Because some things need to hurt before anyone believes they're real. After the session, as people filed out, one trainee lingered. He was younger, nervous, but when he stepped closer, his voice was quiet. "My brother was in one of those broken sims. He hasn't been the same since. Thank you." Jenna nodded once, but her eyes softened. The ghosts were waking, and this time she wasn't going to disappear. That evening, a small convoy pulled into base. Out stepped a man with a cane, silver at his temples, sharp in posture despite a visible limp. Jenna stepped out to meet him, her breath caught. He smiled, pained and proud. "You wrote that code on my ribs. Now let's write the truth across theirs." They shook hands. No cameras, no headlines, just war-forged memory, and a reckoning about to begin. Under the sterile lights of the base's command center, the silence was heavy. Colonel Brandt stood at the center of the briefing room, a redacted report projected behind him, Red Echo schematics flickering faintly across the screen. Jenna sat quietly near the back, her presence both understated and undeniable. "All I'm saying," Brandt began, gesturing to the file, "is that if we're going to keep feeding this protocol into simulations, we better damn well understand what it actually means." Around him sat senior advisors, cyber ops analysts, and a cluster of rising commanders, all with varying degrees of discomfort on their faces. Some squirmed, some averted their eyes. A few locked their gaze on Jenna, trying to reconcile the ghost from Red Echo with the woman who now quietly redefined their chain of command. One advisor, a tall man with silver temples, raised his voice. "These codes were buried for a reason. They were experimental, unstable, Jenna echoed flatly, "because we weren't supposed to survive. But we did, and we remember what worked." Another advisor scoffed. "With respect, remembering and proving are not the same." Brandt stepped in. "She has already provided field-level matches to 3 recent simulation failures, and we're not talking about glitches. We're talking about system spirals that nearly killed candidates. It's anecdotal." "Then make it empirical," Jenna said calmly. "Run my version through the sim and compare outcomes. I'll walk your best trainee through it." The room shifted, whispers passed, someone coughed. Then Colonel Hartley stepped forward. He had been quiet until now, stoic, cold, calculating, with steel-grey eyes and a jaw clenched in permanent judgment. "No need," Hartley said. "We already have someone running Red Echo variants in live drills. Lieutenant Chase is leading the current model." Brandt frowned. "Chase? He's green. He's never handled an active intercept sim." Hartley's lip curled. "He's our future, not a dusty relic covered in war stories." The insult wasn't subtle. Jenna stood slowly. "Then let me walk with him. Let me guide him through the full protocol. If he's truly ready, it won't matter." Hartley shook his head, denied. "We don't need ghosts disrupting the chain of command." "Then you're afraid of what I'll prove." He took a step forward. "I'm afraid of teaching the next generation to idolize trauma." "Then maybe they shouldn't be training for war," gasps echoed. Brandt stepped between them. "Enough. If we're going to talk evidence, we run tests. That's what this base is for. Give her 1 session." Reluctantly, Hartley nodded once. "1, no observers, no recordings." Jenna's eyes didn't leave him. "I'm not the one who's hiding." 2 hours later, Jenna stood inside Simulator Bay 3. Lieutenant Chase, a young man in his mid-20s with neat blonde hair and textbook posture, waited beside her. He looked at her like she was a museum piece. "You're the one with the tattoo, right?" he asked, pulling on his neural harness. Jenna said nothing. "I mean, no offense, just didn't think you were real." She adjusted her headset. "Neither did Command. Let's begin." The simulation loaded. A jungle insertion, 2 hostile zones, evac point compromised. The trainee's role: extract a downed asset while maintaining radio silence and avoiding detection. Chase moved efficiently. Crisp, clean responses. But at the first scramble, an unexpected minefield pattern. He froze. Jenna didn't speak. She simply tapped a code into her console. A sequence lit up. He stared. What is that? The fallback. Echo 9 stitch. It's not in the manual. No, it was never meant to be. Now move. He did. Through instinct, through tension, through sweat. By the end of the simulation, his vitals were elevated. His breath was ragged. But he survived, and so did the asset. As the sim ended, Chase pulled off his headset, blinking hard. That shouldn't have worked. Jenna nodded, but it did. Outside the bay, Hartley was waiting. You manipulated the sim. No, Jenna replied. I completed it, with undocumented protocols. Then maybe it's time you start documenting the truth. He stepped close, voice low. You don't belong here. You're a remnant, a crack in the system. Jenna's voice was steady. No, I'm the part you couldn't erase. That evening, Jenna received a message, unsigned but familiar. A time, a hangar, a name she hadn't heard in 15 years. She went. Inside the dimly lit hangar stood a man in civilian clothes, grayer, leaner, but unmistakable. Captain Rhodes, he said softly. I was beginning to think you'd never come back. She didn't smile. Didn't think I had to. He nodded. Neither did I. Until I found out what they're doing with the codes. They walked in silence. What do you need from me? Jenna finally asked. He turned, face etched with years, to finish what Red Echo started. Under the sterile lights of the base's command center, the silence was heavy. Colonel Brandt stood at the center of the briefing room, a redacted report projected behind him, Red Echo schematics flickering faintly across the screen. Jenna sat quietly near the back, her presence both understated and undeniable. All I'm saying, Brandt began, gesturing to the file, is that if we're going to keep feeding this protocol into simulations, we better damn well understand what it actually means. Around him sat senior advisors, cyber ops analysts, and a cluster of rising commanders, all with varying degrees of discomfort on their faces. Some squirmed, some averted their eyes. A few locked their gaze on Jenna, trying to reconcile the ghost from Red Echo with the woman who now quietly redefined their chain of command. One advisor, a tall man with silver temples, raised his voice. These codes were buried for a reason. They were experimental, unstable. Unstable, Jenna echoed flatly, because we weren't supposed to survive, but we did, and we remember what worked. Another advisor scoffed. With respect, remembering and proving are not the same. Brandt stepped in. She has already provided field-level matches to 3 recent simulation failures, and we're not talking about glitches. We're talking about systems spirals that nearly killed candidates. It's anecdotal. Then make it empirical, Jenna said calmly. Run my version through the sim and compare outcomes. I'll walk your best trainee through it. The room shifted, whispers passed, someone coughed. Then Colonel Hartley stepped forward. He had been quiet until now, stoic, cold, calculating, with steel-grey eyes and a jaw clenched in permanent judgment. No need, Hartley said. We already have someone running Red Echo variants in live drills. Lieutenant Chase is leading the current model. Brandt frowned. Chase? He's green. He's never handled an active intercept sim. Hartley's lip curled. He's our future, not a dusty relic covered in war stories. The insult wasn't subtle. Jenna stood slowly. Then let me walk with him. Let me guide him through the full protocol. If he's truly ready, it won't matter. Hartley shook his head, denied. We don't need ghosts disrupting the chain of command. Then you're afraid of what I'll prove. He took a step forward. I'm afraid of teaching the next generation to idolize trauma. Then maybe they shouldn't be training for war, gasps echoed. Brandt stepped between them. Enough. If we're going to talk evidence, we run tests. That's what this base is for. Give her 1 session. Reluctantly, Hartley nodded once. 1. No observers, no recordings. Jenna's eyes didn't leave him. I'm not the one who's hiding. 2 hours later, Jenna stood inside Simulator Bay 3. Lieutenant Chase, A young man in his mid-twenties with neat blonde hair and textbook posture waited beside her. He looked at her like she was a museum piece. "You're the one with the tattoo, right?" he asked, pulling on his neural harness. Jenna said nothing. "I mean, no offense, just didn't think you were real." She adjusted her headset. Neither did Command. "Let's begin." The simulation loaded. A jungle insertion, 2 hostile zones, evac point compromised. The trainees' role: extract a downed asset while maintaining radio silence and avoiding detection. Chase moved efficiently. Crisp, clean responses. But at the first scramble, an unexpected minefield pattern, he froze. Jenna didn't speak. She simply tapped a code into her console. A sequence lit up. He stared. "What is that?" "The fallback. Echo 9 Stitch." "It's not in the manual." "No. It was never meant to be." "Now move." He did. Through instinct, through tension, through sweat. By the end of the simulation, his vitals were elevated. His breath was ragged. But he survived, and so did the asset. As the sim ended, Chase pulled off his headset, blinking hard. "That shouldn't have worked." Jenna nodded, but it did. Outside the bay, Hartley was waiting. "You manipulated the sim?" "No," Jenna replied. "I completed it, with undocumented protocols. Then maybe it's time you start documenting the truth." He stepped close, voice low. "You don't belong here. You're a remnant, a crack in the system." Jenna's voice was steady. "No, I'm the part you couldn't erase." That evening, Jenna received a message, unsigned but familiar. A time, a hangar, a name she hadn't heard in 15 years. She went. Inside the dimly lit hangar stood a man in civilian clothes, grayer, leaner, but unmistakable. "Captain Rhodes," he said softly, "I was beginning to think you'd never come back." She didn't smile. "Didn't think I had to." He nodded. "Neither did I. Until I found out what they're doing with the codes." They walked in silence. "What do you need from me?" Jenna finally asked. He turned, face etched with years. "To finish what Red Echo started." The wind outside Hangar 47 howled like a memory Jenna had spent years trying to silence inside. The man across from her looked older, sharper, his presence as solid as ever. He handed her a folder. No names, no stamps, just coordinates, timestamps, and one familiar line of code written in ink across the bottom: Echo 9 Stitch. "They're mimicking Red Echo in the new drills," he said, voice low, "but it's all watered down, sanitized. They've gutted the fallback sequences." Jenna flipped through the folder. "And the recruits? Running headfirst into traps, thinking it's all simulated. Last month, 2 almost died during blackout protocol. They don't even recognize the embedded signals." She snapped the folder shut. "Because they weren't taught the truth." He nodded. "That's why I called you. They're rebranding your survival as outdated. Let me see the control logs." He handed her a key card. "Terminal 12C, Level 3. You didn't get it from me." That night, Jenna moved like a shadow through corridors that once bore her authority. The hum of servers greeted her like ghosts. At Terminal 12C, she inserted the card and watched the classified files unravel. Log after log showed altered drills, artificial successes, and mislabeled failures, and buried beneath layers of encryption, tactical overwrite orders, all signed off by Colonel Hartley. She froze. Hartley wasn't just resisting her presence, he was systematically deleting Red Echo's legacy and replacing it with algorithms. She downloaded everything. The next morning, she walked into the control briefing without invitation. Officers turned. Hartley looked up mid-sentence, jaw tightening. "You weren't scheduled," he said. Jenna dropped the drive onto the center table. "Then clear your schedule." Brandt raised an eyebrow. "What is this? Proof that your simulations are being tampered with?" "That command has replaced field protocols with sanitized models that leave soldiers vulnerable." Gasps spread. Hartley leaned in. "This is classified. You're violating clearance limits." Jenna locked eyes with him. "And you're violating every oath you swore when you rewrote a rescue protocol that saved lives," he snapped. "Red Echo is obsolete. It was chaos wrapped in luck. No, it was blood and precision and everything these new kids are missing." Colonel Brandt stood. "Run a comparison test. Real sim. Jenna's protocol against the current model. Top 2 trainees." Hartley scoffed. "You're turning this into a circus." "No," Brandt replied. "We're turning it into truth." 3 hours later, in Simulator Bay 1, Jenna stood across from Lieutenant Madsen, a fierce, fast-reacting cadet known for clean scores and zero emotional interference. Her opponent was Lieutenant Avery, running the revised Hartley protocol, the scenario ambush extraction in unstable terrain, 1 evac option, multiple decoys, 2-minute radio blackout. Jenna fed Madsen a stripped version of Echo 9 Stitch. The sim began. Within minutes, Avery was boxed in, trapped between 2 false signals and a dead evac beacon. She followed protocol, requested backup, but no help came. Meanwhile, Madsen hesitated for half a second, then trusted Jenna's code. She pivoted, rerouted through a thicket marked by a nearly invisible infrared flare. The evac signal popped live. Avery failed. Madsen succeeded. Brandt reviewed the data. Live outcomes, variable pressure. Echo 9 reduced casualty probability by 43%. A stunned silence followed. Jenna turned to Hartley. "Still think I'm obsolete?" He glared. "You just got lucky. Then let me train them all. Let me see if luck repeats." Later that evening, Jenna sat outside the barracks, watching the horizon fade into orange. Footsteps approached. It was Madsen. "That code," she said softly. "It wasn't just a trick, was it?" Jenna looked up. It was a scar, a lesson we carved into ourselves so we wouldn't forget. Madsen sat beside her. "Then teach me more. I don't want to be fast. I want to be right." Jenna nodded. "Then you start tomorrow, and you start with silence." Madsen frowned. "Why silence?" "Because the first thing they taught us was to listen before we lead." Back in the command center, Hartley stared at the Red Echo files now under review. His phone buzzed. A message, 1 word, "She's awake." He deleted it. But he didn't sleep that night. Jenna sat quietly in the dim light of her quarters, the weight of the day pressing down like the cold steel of the hangar walls. Outside, distant hums of aircraft engines mingled with the night wind, a lullaby that was both familiar and restless. She traced the outline of the folder she'd secured earlier, a dossier that held not just data, but the legacy of lives saved and lost. The phone buzzed, jolting her from her thoughts. It was Madsen. The young lieutenant's message was simple, ready to start. Jenna smiled faintly, knowing this was only the beginning. The next morning, the simulation bay was alive with tension. Jenna and Madsen stood side by side, surrounded by blinking consoles and the sterile scent of electronics. The trainees watched eagerly, knowing this session wasn't like any other. Jenna's voice was calm yet sharp. "This isn't about speed. It's about precision. It's about remembering that every code, every move, means a life hanging in the balance." Madsen nodded, absorbing every word. The simulation loaded, a hostile extraction under heavy fire, compromised comms, and shifting terrain that tested both mind and reflexes. The exercise began with calculated chaos. Madsen moved through the environment, her every decision echoing the protocols Jenna had etched into her muscle memory years before. When the first trap sprang, a false evac beacon designed to disorient, Madsen hesitated. Then, recalling the Echo 9 Stitch fallback, she rerouted with fluid precision. The trainees watched in silence as the simulation unfolded, the lines between virtual and visceral blurring. By the end, Madsen had not only completed the mission but had done so while saving her digital team from near-certain failure. The data screens confirmed what Jenna already knew. The legacy code still had life. Later, In the briefing room, Jenna faced an audience of skeptics and believers. Her evidence was irrefutable. The sanitized models put lives at risk, the buried codes carried real tactical advantage, and the institutional resistance was more political than practical. Hartley sat in the front row, jaw tight. His posture betrayed both frustration and grudging respect. "You expect us to rewrite decades of protocol?" he challenged. "No," Jenna replied. "I expect us to stop pretending that progress means forgetting what worked." The debate was fierce, but a shift had begun. The old ghosts weren't going away quietly. That evening, Jenna found herself alone in the mess hall. The door creaked open, and Madsen entered, eyes bright with a new determination. "I want to learn everything," she said simply. Jenna nodded. "Then you need to understand the silence, too." Madsen frowned. "The silence?" Jenna's gaze drifted. "War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought in waiting, in watching, in knowing when to speak and when to listen." They sat together as the lights dimmed. In that quiet, a bond was forged, not just of teacher and student, but of warriors sharing scars unseen. Days turned into weeks. Jenna's training sessions became the pulse of the base's new direction. More trainees requested her guidance, and her protocol gained momentum. Meanwhile, the leaks about the simulation manipulations stirred media interest, and public pressure mounted. Hartley's grip loosened, replaced by cautious cooperation. Jenna used every moment to rebuild what had been lost: protocols, trust, and most importantly, the respect for those who had lived through the chaos. One night, Jenna received an unexpected visitor, an old comrade who had once been the heart of Red Echo's field operations. Their reunion was quiet but profound, a reminder that while the war had changed, their mission remained. Together, they planned a campaign, not just to preserve history, but to protect the future. As the base prepared to implement the revised training protocols, Jenna stood once more by the runway. The tattoo on her ribs caught the morning sun, a silent testament to battles fought and lessons learned. A young recruit approached, eyes wide with hope and fear. "Ready?" Jenna asked. The recruit nodded. "Good. Because this isn't just about simulations, it's about life. And every life counts." With that, Jenna turned toward the horizon, knowing the fight was far from over, but this time she wasn't alone. Jenna stood in the muted glow of the briefing room, the hum of the base settling into its usual night rhythm around her. After weeks of pushing back against the system, fighting to reclaim what had been buried under bureaucracy and indifference, she had finally won. A small victory. The new training protocols based on the Red Echo legacy codes were set to be rolled out across the base. But Jenna knew better than anyone that a victory on paper was just the beginning of a far larger battle. The door opened quietly, and Lieutenant Madsen stepped inside, her face a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. "Ready for the next step?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with anticipation. Jenna nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "This isn't just about drills anymore. It's about how we carry this knowledge forward, how we train the next generation not just to survive, but to understand the cost of each decision." Madsen took a seat, pulling out her tablet and tapping through the latest simulation data. The cadets have been responding well, but some of the senior officers are still skeptical. Jenna's eyes narrowed. Change always threatens those who cling to the past. She gestured toward the display, which showed simulation success rates rising steadily. These numbers aren't just metrics, they're lives. The difference between chaos and control. A soft chime announced a message on Jenna's comm. She glanced down, an encrypted transmission from an unknown source. Curiosity piqued, she opened it. The message was simple but chilling. "We're watching. Stop digging or face consequences." Jenna's jaw clenched. The resistance wasn't just ideological, it was personal. The next morning, the base buzzed with tension. Rumors of pushback against the new protocols had spread, and whispers of sabotage began to surface. Jenna moved through the halls like a shadow, gathering allies quietly. Madsen among them, but also some unexpected faces, seasoned veterans who had seen the cost of complacency firsthand. In a small conference room, Jenna convened a meeting. "We're not just fighting for protocol, we're fighting for the truth, and that means exposing those who would hide behind titles to put soldiers at risk." The group nodded solemnly. Plans were laid out. Monitor simulations closely, document anomalies, and prepare for public disclosure if necessary. Meanwhile, Hartley watched from his office, his fingers drumming against the polished desk. The arrival of dissenters rattled his usual composure. He knew Jenna was more than a ghost from the past. She was a catalyst. He made a call. "Contain the leaks, tighten security, and find out who's behind the transmission." As orders went out, the undercurrent of surveillance grew. Cameras shifted, logs were scrubbed, and digital trails were obscured. But Jenna's network was nimble. Every move was met with a counter. Every attempt at silence met with louder defiance. One evening, Jenna and Madsen reviewed footage from recent drills. Among the data, a subtle anomaly stood out, a new pattern inserted covertly, one that deviated dangerously from the established red echo sequences. Jenna's eyes narrowed. "This isn't an accident." "Someone is trying to overwrite the protocol for their own gain." Madsen swallowed hard. "But why? What could they possibly want?" "Control," Jenna said quietly. "Power masked as progress, and the lives lost along the way are just collateral." The room grew heavy with the weight of that truth. Determined to confront the threat, Jenna coordinated a covert audit of the simulation software. In a secure lab, she and her team dissected lines of code, tracing back unauthorized modifications to a shadowy contractor with ties to the highest levels of command. The discovery was a bombshell. Corruption wasn't just leaking in from rogue elements, it was embedded in the system's core. With mounting evidence, Jenna prepared a report for the base commander. The briefing was tense, the stakes clear. "This isn't just a technical issue," Jenna warned. "It's a breach of trust, and if we don't act, we risk not only lives but the integrity of our entire training operation." The commander's face was unreadable. "Finally," he said, "we'll initiate an investigation. But tread carefully. The higher-ups aren't eager to see this go public." Jenna nodded, steeling herself. The fight was far from over. Weeks passed with mounting pressure. Jenna found solace in the quiet moments with Madsen, who was evolving from trainee to trusted confidant. "You carry the scars of your past," Madsen said one evening, "but you also carry the hope for the future." Jenna smiled faintly. "I carry both, and that's why I can't stop." The turning point came unexpectedly. A whistleblower from within Evermark Systems contacted Jenna anonymously, offering concrete proof of data manipulation and command interference. The documents were irrefutable, hidden agendas laid bare. Jenna shared the findings with the investigative team, the pieces finally aligning into a picture of systemic betrayal. As the investigation unfolded, Jenna found herself back at the hangar, where her journey had reignited. The man who had called her back, now a trusted ally, stood beside her. "We're ready to expose the truth," he said. Jenna nodded, feeling the weight of years and the urgency of now. "This is more than a mission," she said. "It's a reckoning." With evidence in hand and allies at her side, Jenna prepared to step into the light, to challenge not only the corrupt but the complacent. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Jenna felt something she hadn't in a long time: hope. And with it, the fierce determination to see justice done, no matter the cost. Jenna walked into the dimly lit briefing room, the hum of the bass slowly fading into a tense silence. Today was pivotal. Months of gathering evidence, training recruits, and navigating political minefields had led her to this moment. The panel of senior officers, a mix of skepticism and curiosity etched across their faces, awaited her presentation. She began with clarity and conviction, laying out the irrefutable proof of systemic manipulation within the simulation programs. She detailed how the Red Echo legacy codes had been altered and suppressed, putting trainees' lives at risk. The room listened, some shifting uncomfortably as the weight of her words settled. One officer, a sharp-eyed colonel with decades of experience, leaned forward. "These revelations threaten the integrity of our entire training doctrine. How do you propose we restore trust?" Jenna met his gaze. "By restoring transparency, we need open audits, independent oversight, and a recommitment to protocols proven in combat, not just convenience." Murmurs spread, but Jenna pressed on, detailing the successful outcomes from the recruits trained under her guidance. She highlighted Lieutenant Madsen's remarkable progress, underscoring how adherence to authentic protocols improved decision-making under pressure. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the rear of the room. A junior officer rushed in, whispering urgently to the panel chair. The color drained from the chair's face. "They've leaked a classified training video online," the officer reported. "It's spreading fast, showing the corrupted simulation code." Jenna's heart tightened. The battle was moving into the public eye, and with it, unpredictable consequences. The panel convened quickly. Jenna advocated for full disclosure, arguing that transparency was the only way forward to rebuild trust within the ranks and with the public. Yet, resistance remained. Some feared the fallout, damaged reputations, lost contracts, and political backlash. Hartley's name surfaced repeatedly, with calls to protect those implicated. Outside, news of the leak sparked debate across military forums and media outlets. Jenna found herself both hailed as a whistleblower and targeted by detractors questioning her motives. Amid the turmoil, Jenna maintained focus. She coordinated with allies to prepare official statements, secure more evidence, and support trainees affected by flawed simulations. One evening, Madsen approached Jenna, her face a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I'm ready to testify," she said. "They need to hear the truth from those who lived it." Jenna nodded, proud but wary of the challenges ahead. The weeks that followed were intense. Congressional inquiries loomed, and Jenna testified before committees, sharing her story with unwavering honesty. The process was grueling, but it galvanized change. Policies began shifting toward greater oversight, and the base adopted new training standards inspired by Jenna's work. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. Yet Jenna knew the fight wasn't over. The battle for integrity and respect within the military culture would continue. As she stood once more by the runway, the tattoo on her ribs visible beneath her jacket, Jenna felt a renewed sense of purpose. Every scar, every sacrifice was a testament to resilience, and she was ready to keep fighting for those who could not. Jenna stepped onto the familiar tarmac as dawn stretched thin fingers of light across the horizon. The air was cool, crisp, yet charged with an intensity that seemed to hum beneath the surface of the base's routine morning bustle. Today marked the beginning of a new chapter. One built not just on the scars of past battles, but on the promise of reform, transparency, and hope. Her boots crunched softly against the gravel as she moved towards the training facility, the weight of the past week's battles resting lightly on her shoulders. The fight to restore the Red Echo protocol, to expose the corrupt manipulation within the simulation programs, had been grueling. But Jenna knew the real challenge was only just beginning. Changing minds and policies was one thing. Changing culture was far harder. Inside the main hall, the room was already filling with eager faces. Trainees, instructors, and senior officers gathered for the inaugural session of the newly revamped training program. The old protocols had been reinstated with critical updates, and Jenna was entrusted to lead the charge. She took a moment watching the crowd. Among them, she spotted familiar faces. Madsen, steady and confident, a few of the veterans who had supported her efforts, and even some skeptics, curious or perhaps cautious. Jenna cleared her throat and began. "Good morning. Today, we're not just training for war, we're training for survival, ours and our comrades. The codes you will learn aren't lines of text or sterile data. They are etched in blood, sacrifice, and hard-earned wisdom." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. She proceeded to detail the origins of the Red Echo Protocol, the story behind the tattoo on her ribs that had sparked this entire crusade. She spoke of the covert communications, the life-saving maneuvers, and the scars, both physical and mental, that told a story far beyond any classroom lesson. Throughout her presentation, Jenna interwove tactical instruction with personal narratives, weaving a tapestry of honor, resilience, and duty that resonated deeply. The recruits listened, eyes wide, absorbing not just the information but the spirit behind it. After the lecture, Jenna led the group into the simulation bays. The environment was stark, yet buzzing with energy. This was the crucible where theory met reality, where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. The day's exercise was brutal. A hostage extraction in hostile terrain, complicated by electronic warfare, jamming communication, and shifting alliances. Jenna watched as trainees navigated the simulated chaos, calling out commands, adjusting tactics, and adapting on the fly. Madsen stood out, her adherence to the Red Echo fallback sequences, allowing her to avoid deadly traps that ensnared others. Jenna nodded in approval, knowing that each successful maneuver was a victory not just in simulation, but against the apathy and neglect that had nearly buried these protocols. Yet the session wasn't without its challenges. A few trainees struggled, their hesitation costing precious time and simulated lives. Jenna took them aside, guiding, encouraging, and reinforcing the message that understanding the why behind every code was as vital as memorizing the sequence. As the day drew to a close, Jenna gathered the group. Remember, this isn't just about protocol. It's about responsibility to yourselves, your team, and the mission. The codes we honor today were forged in fire. Respect them. Outside, the base was alive with murmurs of change. Word had spread about the revitalized program, attracting attention from higher commands and even the media interested in the unfolding story of reform. Jenna's phone buzzed. It was Lena Marquez, the journalist who had documented much of her journey. The public response is growing. People want to see the faces behind the scars, the real stories. Jenna smiled, tired but resolute. Then we give them truth, not noise. The following week, Jenna was summoned to a meeting with the base's top brass. The atmosphere was tense. She entered the room to find Colonel Brandt, Lieutenant General Hammond, and several other high-ranking officers seated around a polished table. "Ms. Rhodes," Brandt began, "your efforts have brought undeniable improvements. The new training metrics show promise. But with attention comes scrutiny and responsibility." Hammond's gaze was sharp. "We're considering expanding the Red Echo program beyond this base. It's essential that it scales effectively without losing integrity." Jenna nodded. "Scaling with integrity means maintaining transparency and accountability. We can't allow the mistakes of the past to repeat themselves." The discussion turned to logistics, budget constraints, and political considerations. Jenna listened carefully, knowing that while the program's expansion was a victory, the real test would be in implementation. Later, as the meeting broke up, Hammond approached Jenna quietly. "You've done well, but be prepared. The higher the stakes, the fiercer the opposition." Jenna met his warning with steady eyes. "I'm ready." Amid the progress, unexpected challenges arose. Jenna discovered that some contractors working on the simulation software had ties to factions resistant to change, with interests in maintaining the status quo for profit and influence. She coordinated with Madsen and trusted allies to conduct covert audits, uncovering attempts to introduce backdoors and sabotage the training sequences. One night, Jenna received an encrypted message from an anonymous source within the contractor network, revealing a planned sabotage during an upcoming high-profile demonstration. Acting swiftly, Jenna alerted base security and devised a countermeasure plan, turning the demonstration into a test not just of protocol, but of vigilance. The demonstration day arrived. Military leaders, government officials and media representatives filled the observation room, their expectations high. During the simulation, attempts at interference were detected and neutralized. Thanks to Jenna's preparations, the trainees executed the Red Echo sequences flawlessly, earning applause and renewed confidence. Afterward, Jenna addressed the crowd. "This is the future of tactical training, not sanitized, but real. Not convenient, but essential." Her words resonated beyond the walls, sparking discussions in military circles and policy forums. Back at the base, Jenna reflected on the journey. The tattoo on her ribs no longer felt like a burden, but a beacon, reminding her of what had been lost and what could be regained. Madsen joined her by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "Do you think it'll last?" Jenna smiled softly. "It has to. For the sake of every soldier who'll carry these codes forward." The fight for integrity and truth was ongoing, but Jenna Rhodes was no longer alone. Together, they would forge a path where scars told stories, and stories forged strength. Jenna stood in the quiet glow of the command center, the weight of responsibility pressing on her like the steel beams overhead. The journey from being a shadow in the system to the architect of its reform had been arduous, but the real battle, the battle for the hearts and minds of those she served alongside, was only just beginning. Her phone vibrated softly. A message from Madsen: "We're ready to push forward. The trainees are responding, but the resistance is growing." Jenna exhaled, steeling herself for the fight ahead. The next morning, Jenna convened a meeting with her core team, instructors, veterans, and tech specialists, all united by a common goal: to ensure the integrity of the Red Echo protocols and to safeguard the soldiers who would depend on them. They discussed strategies for expanding training while monitoring for any attempts at sabotage or misinformation. Meanwhile, whispers of Jenna's reforms had reached high-ranking officials and political figures, stirring both support and opposition. Jenna navigated this complex landscape with measured determination, understanding that true change required both transparency and diplomacy. Back on the training floor, she observed Lieutenant Madsen leading a group through a rigorous simulation. The young officer's confidence and mastery of the codes were evident, a testament to Jenna's dedication. Yet Jenna knew complacency was the enemy. She continued refining the curriculum, incorporating real-world scenarios and psychological resilience training. One evening, Jenna received an unexpected visitor, a military chaplain who had served alongside her years ago. His presence was a reminder of the sacrifices behind every code and every mission. They spoke quietly about healing, honor, and the unseen battles veterans face long after the war zone fades. As weeks passed, Jenna's program gained momentum. New recruits embraced the depth and authenticity of the training, while skeptics found themselves challenged by undeniable results. The base became a hub of innovation and reflection, a place where history and progress converged. But challenges persisted. Attempts to undermine the program surfaced in subtle ways: misplaced equipment, altered logs, and anonymous threats. Jenna addressed these head-on, fostering a culture of vigilance and solidarity. In a pivotal moment, Jenna was invited to a national defense conference to share her insights and advocate for the broader adoption of the Red Echo protocols. Standing before an audience of military leaders and policymakers, she spoke not just of tactics, but of trust, resilience, and the power of remembering. Her words resonated, sparking discussions that would ripple through defense communities nationwide. Returning to base, Jenna felt a renewed sense of purpose. The tattoo on her ribs, once a hidden mark, had become a symbol of enduring strength and legacy. As she watched the sun set over the runway, Jenna knew the mission was far from over. But with allies like Madsen and a growing community of warriors committed to truth and integrity, the future looked brighter. Together, they would carry the flame forward, honoring the past while shaping what was yet to come. The early morning light filtered softly through the tall windows of the base's operations center. Jenna Rhodes stood silently by the digital map that pulsed with real-time updates of the training zones. The months of relentless pursuit to revive the Red Echo protocols had evolved into a fight against an entrenched resistance far more insidious than she had imagined. Now, the battlefield had shifted from simulated combat zones to the halls of command and control. She felt the weight of expectation not only from the officers who supported her cause, but also from the unseen forces maneuvering in the shadows. The sabotage she had uncovered was no mere technical glitch. It was a calculated effort to maintain power structures that favored complacency and profit over the lives of soldiers. Jenna's resolve had been tested time and again, but she knew that exposing the full extent of the conspiracy would require more than evidence. It demanded unyielding courage and strategic precision. As the briefing commenced, Jenna addressed a gathering that included defense inspectors, senior officers, legal representatives, and a panel from the Inspector General's office. The atmosphere was charged with a blend of skepticism and tentative hope. Jenna's voice was calm but firm as she outlined the scope of the corruption, how contractors with political connections had manipulated simulation data, how altered codes compromised the training integrity, and how this breach threatened the safety of every soldier. The room absorbed her words in silence, the gravity of the revelations sinking in. Documents were presented, time-stamped logs, email chains, and software forensics, each piece building an irrefutable case. Jenna emphasized that this was not a rogue incident, but a systemic failure rooted in an unwillingness to confront inconvenient truths. One of the senior officers, a stoic general with decades of service, leaned forward. "This is a serious indictment of our institution. How can we ensure that these vulnerabilities are sealed and that such betrayals never recur?" Jenna met his gaze without hesitation. Through transparency, accountability, and by empowering those who carry the weight of these protocols, the soldiers and instructors, we must dismantle the opaque structures that enabled this sabotage. The session continued with pointed questions and heated debate. Some officers expressed concern about the reputational damage and operational disruptions, while others began to rally behind Jenna's vision of reform. The meeting concluded with an order for a comprehensive, independent audit of all simulation software and training procedures, signaling an unprecedented level of scrutiny. Outside the formal proceedings, Jenna faced a different kind of battle. Surveillance intensified, security protocols tightened around her. Unmarked vehicles were seen near her quarters. Anonymous threats, veiled yet menacing, appeared in her encrypted inbox. Each message was a reminder of the high stakes and the powerful adversaries determined to silence her, yet support blossomed in unexpected quarters. Veteran groups issued public statements praising her courage. Younger officers, inspired by her tenacity, discreetly shared information that further unraveled the web of deceit. Jenna's network grew, built on trust, shared purpose, and the unwavering commitment to truth. Late one evening, while reviewing new data with Lieutenant Madsen, Jenna paused at a particular anomaly, an unexplained patch of code that seemed designed to mask deeper intrusions. Madsen's brow furrowed. This goes beyond sabotage. It's deliberate obfuscation. Someone wanted to hide their tracks completely. Jenna nodded grimly. And that someone is closer than we think. We're not just fighting technology, we're confronting institutional betrayal. The gravity of their discovery galvanized the team into action. They tightened security around evidence, enhanced cyber defenses, and coordinated with external oversight agencies. Jenna herself took the lead in drafting protocols to prevent future manipulation, combining technical safeguards with cultural reforms. As the investigation advanced, the department publicly acknowledged the issue, marking a significant shift from denial to accountability. Disciplinary actions were initiated against several contractors and officials implicated in the scandal. Colonel Hartley, whose resistance had become emblematic of the old guard, was officially reassigned pending further inquiry. The changes rippled through the base. Training programs were revamped, oversight committees empowered, and Jenna's restored Red Echo sequences became the standard. Trust, once fractured, began to mend slowly but surely. In quieter moments, Jenna reflected on the personal toll of her crusade. The scars beneath her skin, the tattoo etched along her ribs, reminded her of battles fought in silence. But now, those marks had become symbols of leadership, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of justice. One afternoon, as the sun warmed the tarmac, Jenna met with a group of trainees whose faces held both uncertainty and determination. She shared not just protocols, but stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and hope. She urged them to carry forward the legacy, to protect the truth, and to never let complacency endanger lives again. The fight was far from over. But with every new recruit who embraced the lessons etched in blood and courage, Jenna saw the promise of a stronger, more vigilant force. Standing once more by the runway as twilight deepened, Jenna allowed herself a brief moment of peace. The horizon was vast, filled with unknown challenges, but she was no longer alone. The mission endured, not as a solitary battle, but as a collective vow to honor the past and safeguard the future. The echoes of Red Echo would carry on, whispered in code and carried on the wings of those brave enough to listen. The sun crept slowly over the horizon, casting long shadows across the sprawling airbase. Jenna Rhodes arrived early, her steps steady as she made her way through the morning mist. Each breath of crisp air reminded her how far the journey had come, and how much farther it still must go. The Red Echo protocols, once buried beneath layers of secrecy and sabotage, were now poised to become the foundation of a new era in military training. Inside the training center, a buzz of energy filled the air. Recruits fresh from basic training mixed with seasoned instructors all gathered to witness the launch of the revitalized program. Jenna took a moment to survey the room. The eager faces, the nervous glances, the tight grips on notebooks and gear. This was the future. These soldiers would carry forward the legacy she and her comrades had fought so hard to preserve. Jenna stepped onto the platform, her presence commanding attention. "Welcome to a new chapter," she began, her voice firm and clear. "Today we embrace not only the lessons of tactics and strategy, but the deeper truths behind every code we follow, the lives they protect, the sacrifices they honor." She walked through the history of the Red Echo sequence, recounting the desperate nights in hostile terrain when every signal, every gesture meant the difference between survival and loss. The tattoo along her ribs, once a silent mark of pain and sacrifice, now symbolized a living testament to resilience and leadership. Lieutenant Madsen took the floor next, sharing first-hand accounts of how adherence to authentic protocols saved lives during training exercises. The trainees listened intently, their respect palpable. The room became a crucible of shared purpose. The day's exercises pushed the recruits to their limits. Complex urban scenarios with shifting variables tested their adaptability. Jenna observed from the control room, her eyes scanning live feeds and biometric data. Every maneuver executed with precision was a victory, not just in simulation, but in restoring honor to a fractured system. Despite the success, Jenna remained vigilant. The lingering threat of sabotage and resistance within the ranks was real. She scheduled regular audits, enhanced cybersecurity measures, and cultivated alliances with whistleblowers and advocates. Her leadership was both a shield and a beacon. Beyond training, Jenna navigated the corridors of power. Meetings with defense officials, legislators, and advocacy groups filled her calendar. She advocated tirelessly for transparency, accountability, and support systems for veterans and active personnel alike. Each conversation chipped away at entrenched resistance. Outside the base, the story of the Red Echo revival captured public imagination. Media coverage highlighted the courage of those who dared to expose corruption and fight for change. Jenna found herself both celebrated and scrutinized, a symbol of perseverance in a complex battle. Among her quiet moments was a visit to the base's Veterans Center. There, surrounded by weathered faces and stories etched in time, Jenna found renewed inspiration. She listened as veterans shared their struggles with reintegration, the invisible scars that often outlasted physical wounds. Their voices reinforced her conviction that reform was not merely procedural, but profoundly personal. Weeks later, Jenna received an invitation to speak at the National Defense Readiness Conference. Standing before a packed auditorium of military leaders, policymakers, and journalists, she recounted the journey. From covert sabotage to public reckoning and systemic reform, her speech was heartfelt and unapologetic. She called for a cultural transformation that honored not just battlefield heroics, but the daily courage of those training, healing, and rebuilding. The audience responded with standing ovations, sparking a wave of endorsements and calls for widespread adoption of the Red Echo program. Back at the base, Jenna oversaw the integration of new technologies and methodologies into the curriculum. Advanced simulations, immersive virtual reality scenarios, and mental resilience training became staples. The culture shifted from one of suspicion to one of shared responsibility. But Jenna remained aware of ongoing challenges. Factions resistant to change continued to maneuver behind the scenes. Attempts to dilute protocols, delay funding, and discredit reformers emerged sporadically. Jenna met each obstacle with strategic patience and an ever-expanding coalition. One evening, as the base settled into a rare calm, Jenna walked the perimeter alone. The stars above mirrored the bright lights below, reminders of the vastness beyond and the intimate battles within. She touched the edge of her shirt, feeling the familiar outline of her tattoo, a symbol, she thought, of the countless battles, visible and unseen, that had shaped her and her mission. The road ahead was long, but Jenna Rhodes was ready for herself, for her comrades, and for the generations of soldiers who would one day stand where she stood, carrying the torch of Red Echo and the legacy of truth. The morning sun filtered through the thick canopy of clouds as Jenna Rhodes stepped onto the base's tarmac, the weight of recent victories tempered by the knowledge that change was an ongoing battle. The reforms she had championed were taking root, but the path ahead was fraught with new challenges. Bureaucratic resistance, lingering skepticism, and the delicate task of institutionalizing culture shifts in a vast military apparatus. Her first stop was the newly established Red Echo Simulation Wing, a gleaming complex outfitted with state-of-the-art technology. The walls bore murals honoring those who had sacrificed everything for the mission, a constant reminder that their work was about legacy as much as logistics. Inside, Jenna met with her team of instructors and technicians. Lieutenant Madsen, now promoted to lead training officer, greeted her with a nod. "We're ready to ramp up the next cycle. Enrollment is up and feedback has been overwhelmingly positive." Jenna smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "That's good to hear. But we must remain vigilant. Complacency is the enemy." The day's agenda included a comprehensive review of the new curriculum modules, designed not only to enhance tactical proficiency, but also to foster mental resilience and ethical decision-making. Jenna emphasized the importance of teaching soldiers to question orders when necessary, to value integrity over blind obedience. She led a roundtable discussion, inviting input from a diverse panel: veterans, psychologists, cybersecurity experts, and junior officers. The exchange was dynamic, sometimes contentious, but always rooted in shared commitment. During a break, Jenna took a moment to reflect on the journey. The tattoo along her ribs tingled faintly, as if reminding her of battles past and promises made. This mission was no longer just about protocols or programs. It was about people, real lives intertwined with codes and courage. Later, Jenna was invited to attend a ceremony honoring veterans who had contributed to the reform effort. Among the honorees was Colonel Avery Mason, a man she had once coordinated rescue operations with during a harrowing mission years ago. His presence was a poignant reminder of the human bonds forged in conflict. As she approached the podium to accept a commendation, Jenna's mind drifted briefly to the challenges still ahead. The reforms had stirred controversy beyond the base. Political factions debated budgets and priorities, some pushing back against what they saw as disruptive changes. Yet the support from the rank-and-file soldiers, veterans, and advocacy groups remained steadfast. Jenna's story had become a symbol, inspiring a new generation to demand accountability and compassion in equal measure. In the weeks that followed, Jenna worked tirelessly to expand outreach programs, partnering with universities, veteran organizations, and policymakers. She spearheaded initiatives aimed at improving mental health services, transition support, and workplace culture within the military. Her leadership style evolved, balancing fierce determination with empathy and openness. She mentored junior officers, encouraging them to embrace transparency and ethical leadership. One evening, Jenna received an unexpected message, an invitation to join a newly formed national task force on military reform, comprising leaders from across the defense and legislative spectrum. The invitation was both an honor and a challenge, a call to influence policy at the highest levels. She accepted, recognizing that true change required engagement beyond the base into the heart of governance. At the first task force meeting, Jenna presented data-driven recommendations and compelling testimonies, advocating for sustained funding, rigorous oversight, and enhanced veteran care. Her arguments were met with both applause and resistance, a microcosm of the larger societal debate. Back at the base, Jenna's presence invigorated the training programs. She introduced workshops on leadership ethics, whistleblower protections, and cultural competency. The ripple effects were evident. Trainees reported increased confidence and a sense of purpose. Despite progress, Jenna remained aware of the ever-present shadows. Attempts to undermine reforms persisted, often cloaked in bureaucratic jargon or budgetary concerns. Jenna responded by cultivating transparency, engaging with media, and fostering alliances with reform-minded leaders. Her resilience was tested repeatedly, but each setback only strengthened her resolve. The tattoo on her ribs had become more than a personal mark. It was a beacon for those who believed in honor beyond orders. As dusk settled over the base, Jenna stood by the runway, gazing at the horizon. The journey was far from over. But she knew with unwavering certainty that every step taken was a step toward a better future for those who served. The legacy of Red Echo was secure in the hearts of the soldiers, the structures of the military, and the promise of vigilance. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, briefings, and strategic planning as Jenna Rhodes immersed herself in the National Task Force. The room buzzed with energy and tension, a melting pot of military officials, policymakers, veteran advocates, and security experts. Jenna quickly learned that effecting change at this level required patience, diplomacy, and unshakable conviction. At her first public hearing, Jenna took the podium with measured confidence. The chamber was filled with senators, representatives, and a packed gallery of supporters and skeptics. Cameras flashed as she presented her detailed report, weaving together data from the Red Echo program with compelling stories of soldiers transformed by the renewed protocols. She emphasized the necessity of protecting whistleblowers, investing in mental health, and ensuring transparency in military operations. Her message was clear: the health of the military depended on the integrity of its training and the welfare of its people. Though some questioned the costs and scope of her proposals, Jenna's testimony resonated widely. News outlets picked up her words, sparking nationwide conversations about military reform and veteran care. Social media campaigns rallied around hashtags like #EchoTheTruth and #HonorInAction. Back at the base, Jenna found solace and strength among the soldiers and instructors whose lives she'd touched. Training sessions became forums for open dialogue, where veterans shared experiences and junior officers learned not just tactics, but values. The tattoo along her ribs felt like a steady pulse, a reminder of the sacrifices behind every decision. Yet, challenges persisted. Opposing interests launched targeted campaigns to discredit the reforms, exploiting bureaucratic red tape and stirring public doubt. Jenna faced smear attempts in the press, anonymous threats, and political maneuvering designed to stall progress. Undeterred, she responded with transparency, hosting open forums, granting interviews, and inviting independent audits. She built bridges across divides, forging coalitions with lawmakers, veterans groups, and media outlets dedicated to truth. Her leadership inspired a new wave of recruits, many motivated by her story and the vision she championed. They trained harder, questioned more, and carried the Red Echo legacy with pride. One evening, during a quiet moment, Jenna received a letter from a young soldier who had completed the Red Echo training. The soldier wrote of newfound confidence, a deeper understanding of duty, and the courage to stand up for what was right. Jenna read the letter twice, tears welling, but her resolve was steady. The mission had become bigger than any one person. It was a movement, a collective vow to honor those who served and to protect the values that defined them. Months later, Jenna returned to the base's training hall for the dedication of the newly named Rhodes Center for Tactical Integrity and Veteran Advocacy. The ceremony was attended by military leaders, government officials, families, and soldiers. The plaque bearing her name hung prominently, a symbol of enduring change. Colonel Avery Mason, now an advocate and mentor, spoke movingly about Jenna's impact. She has shown us that courage is not just in battle, but in standing up to the forces within. Her legacy will guide generations. As Jenna accepted the honor, she reflected on the long road, from a hidden scar beneath her shirt to a beacon for reform. The tattoo on her ribs was a testament, not just to survival but to purpose. The journey ahead would still be fraught with trials. Systems resist change. Power seeks preservation. But Jenna Rhodes had ignited a flame too bright to be extinguished. Her final words to the assembly echoed with quiet power. True strength lies in integrity, in the courage to face truth, and in the commitment to protect those who carry our future. The applause was thunderous. Outside, soldiers and civilians alike shared stories inspired by her fight, signaling a new dawn for military culture and veteran care. As twilight descended on the base, Jenna walked alone along the runway. The stars began to twinkle overhead, mirroring the distant lights of hope she had helped kindle. The Red Echo mission was no longer hers alone. It belonged to every soldier who dared to honor the past by shaping a just future. The tattoo on her ribs ached softly, an eternal reminder etched in skin and spirit. The war for integrity and honor continued. The years ahead shimmered with possibility. Jenna Rhodes stood once more at the edge of the runway, the steady hum of new training exercises filling the air around her. The battles she'd fought were no longer distant memories, but living lessons shaping the next generation. The Red Echo protocols had become more than a program. They were a promise that the sacrifices of the past would not be forgotten and that integrity would guide every step forward. Veterans returning home found renewed support, and young soldiers trained not just for war, but for honor and humanity. Jenna's tattoo, a symbol etched in flesh and spirit, had come to represent a movement, one that transcended ranks, titles, and divisions. It was the embodiment of resilience and the quiet power of standing tall against adversity. In classrooms, training centers, and community halls, the story of Red Echo inspired countless voices to rise. Veterans shared their scars and stories openly, bridging gaps and healing wounds both seen and unseen. Looking to the horizon, Jenna felt the weight of responsibility but also the lightness of hope. The mission she had carried alone had blossomed into a collective vow, a commitment to safeguard truth, protect the vulnerable, and honor every story of courage. Though challenges would surely come, the foundation was strong. The legacy of those who fought in silence would endure, carried on by those brave enough to listen and bold enough to act. And so, beneath the vast sky, Jenna breathed deeply and stepped forward, not just as a soldier or leader, but as a guardian of a future shaped by dignity, strength, and unwavering heart. The journey continues. The night settled softly over the base, the quiet hum of distant machinery blending with the gentle rustle of wind through nearby trees. Jenna Rhodes stood by the window of her modest quarters, gazing out at the runway where countless missions had begun, and many more would take flight in the future. The tattoo along her ribs, faint but indelible, reminded her that some battles are fought not with weapons but with unwavering conviction. Her journey from a quiet officer bearing hidden scars to a leader shaping the future of military training had been fraught with hardship and resistance. Yet, it was also a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of truth. In the days that followed her testimony before the National Task Force, Jenna watched as the ripple effects of change spread through the armed forces and beyond. Veterans found new platforms to share their stories. Training programs nationwide embraced the Red Echo principles. Policies shifted toward transparency, accountability, and care. But Jenna knew that real change was not a destination. It was a continuous process. Every day brought new challenges and new opportunities to stand firm. As she prepared to rest for the night, Jenna's thoughts drifted to the countless soldiers, some seen, many unseen, who carried burdens heavier than any protocol could capture. Their stories fueled her resolve. She reached for her phone and opened a message from a young recruit, simply reading, "Thank you for showing me what true strength looks like." A soft smile touched Jenna's lips. The journey was far from over, but tonight there was peace in knowing the fight had forged something enduring. Across the country, viewers had been moved by the story of Jenna Rhodes, the woman whose tattooed ribs told a story of sacrifice and leadership, who dared to confront betrayal and rebuild trust. They saw not just a soldier, but a symbol of courage in everyday life. At Veteran Biker, we believe that the most profound stories are those that remind us of the human spirit's capacity to overcome, to inspire, and to transform. Jenna's journey is a beacon, a call to recognize the unseen battles fought by so many and to honor the scars that shape us. If this story touched you, if it stirred something deep within, we invite you to share your thoughts below. Tell us where you're watching from, what part moved you most, or your own story of resilience. Your voice matters. Join the conversation. Like, subscribe, and become part of the Veteran Biker family, where stories of strength, dignity, and quiet heroism are told with heart. Because every scar has a story. Every story deserves to be heard. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest battles are fought in silence and won with courage.